Hello,
Hello.
you all right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I've just woken up and I'm cold. I've got all snugglies on.
It is cold again.
It's freezing. I got
Mm.
sunburn a couple of days ago and now I'm freezing cold and wearing this massive thing.
Are you still getting the cold hands and feet and arms and legs and
No, I'm actually, yeah, I've had an improvement in quite a few things in the last month or so, but I'm on a different protocol. Um and there's Yeah, I don't want to. I don't like talking about things if I've had a little bit longer time with
I
them.
know,
But I
I
did
know.
notice yesterday that I didn't have pruny fingers. Oh,
Oh, see, I've still got those.
yeah. Well, I kind of I want to wait a little bit longer and see if they really have gone. But I didn't have them yesterday, so I was quite excited about that. So, um, let's talk about trust. It's a good topic.
Like the snake in Jungle Book. Trust in me. You've seen Jungle Book,
I
right?
have seen Jungle Book. Oh my goodness, that takes me back. Jungle Book. I went to see that when I used to live in Saudi when I was a child, and I went to watch Jungle Book. I think when I was 5, and it was like a date with this boy who was my friend, and I thought he was like my boyfriend, and we lived on a compound, and I went to the cinema, and I can still remember the picture of me going off on my date, and I was very excited. Oh, you're taking me right back then. Um, yeah, so trust. I think it's a really interesting topic for us. Um, and it can mean all sorts of different things. And it's relevant for me, it's relevant in lots of different ways. Is trust something that you think is relevant in this situation for you?
Oh, massively. It's been a massive part of this because you've got multiple elements of trust. Excuse me, my throat's really dry today. Um, you've got trust in yourself, so your own intuition, your gut feelings, how you feel. You're always second guessing how you're coping. So there's trust in your own judgment, I suppose. And then there's trust in the wider community, like the government and the NHS and your doctor and that element of trust. And then you've got trust in your own kind of friendships and personal relationships. So there's like a multi-pronged kind of trust issue going on, I think, for a lot of us.
Um, Trust in media as well.
Media, yeah, yeah.
That's been a big one for me with this. Um,
Yeah, I couldn't believe when we first started reaching out to media and the effort we put into it to send very well-rounded, very well-written emails to journalists. I couldn't believe that they couldn't get back to us. They didn't want to know. And it wasn't them, but it was just the whole situation. It was just like, well, why don't they want to know?
I think I'd been a bit suspicious that the media, yeah, I kind of knew that the media weren't telling the truth in general years ago, way before all of this. There were a couple of things that happened to somebody else that I know that they basically were writing absolute nonsense about them in the
Well, they do,
newspapers.
don't they? We all
Yeah.
know that. The tabloids have
Well,
got a kind of that's their kind of what's the word? Look, the brain fog's hitting.
modus
Reputation.
operandi. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I knew a bit, but I didn't think it was to quite the extent that it is. And I only really discovered that through going through this experience, when talking to in the media and saying, you know, before you and I met and before the group and everything, and when I talked to media friends and I said, I can't find anything about other people who've had adverse reactions. I can't find anything in the media, and you know, are you going to be writing about this? And when I was talking to them about it, and they would say, we're not allowed to talk about it. And that shocked me, I think. And then when I started writing about what happened to me, and these little warnings would appear on Facebook, and when, I mean, we had on this channel, didn't we, the 2 episodes ago, we had the kindness one, YouTube pulled it. And I didn't know things like that happened. So
No.
that, I suppose I was very naive. I didn't realize that that TV, not that, you know, I said before, I didn't watch too much of it, but that, oh, I didn't realize that there's so much stuff that's not being shared on any kind of media. And I used to have the BBC app on my phone, and I used to watch the news there. And having gone through this experience, and discovering that and not being represented in the media, I suppose, seeing our situation not being represented in the media, it made me lose trust in everything, and all this information pushing us to trust in the healthcare system, and to trust in a pharmaceutical product, and to trust the information that we've been given, and to find out that actually we can't trust it, is very disconcerting. It's really unsettling. It affects, I think, everything about how you look at everything, and that's a really difficult situation to find yourself in, when you just don't trust it. You don't trust the media. I found a couple of weeks ago, it was, you know, a while ago, when it was the coronation. I'm not massively into the royal family at all, and I think that, you know, this could have been an opportunity to change quite a few things about the royal family. But I ordinarily, I think a few years ago, I probably would have watched the coronation, because I quite like costumes and tradition, and you know, there would have been elements of it that I probably would have quite enjoyed. And I caught a little bit of it, but I just didn't, I didn't get any sense of joy or anything. And there was an event in town which was all about celebrating the coronation. And again, I would have really enjoyed that. I love it when I live in a lovely place and everybody gets together and it's really lovely, but I couldn't experience any joy in that. And I came to the conclusion that it was because I had lost trust in all of these institutions that were part of kind of living in England and growing up in England, and part of life here, and part of those kinds of gatherings and communities. They're all connected with institutions that I no longer have any faith in or any trust in at all. So it removes you from experiencing that kind of joy. You have to find a different way to live with no longer having that connection with a lot of people in your community. Does that make sense? And I put it
Yeah,
all
it
down
does.
to, it's related to trust.
It is. It is. I think it is. And you know, some people, you know, say, you know, that you were, or, you know, I've personally been called stupid by people online for trusting what I was told. And for them to not have my back as well, the government to not have my back in this, or that's what it feels like, just kind of compounds that even more. And you know, I mean, I've always kind of I wouldn't say I've trusted it all 100%, because I haven't. I've always questioned things, so I've always been curious and questioned things. But I'd say, yeah, the trust is gone, isn't it?
Mm.
It's got to be rebuilt. Trust is always part of a two-way relationship, right? So if one person, if you lose trust in that person or that institution, they have to make amends. You have to rebuild your trust in them, but with their help. You can't do it on your own.
No, and I think if somebody makes a mistake, or an institution makes a mistake, if something happens, like let's say it was, you know, an innocent mistake, something we're just unlucky, something happened to us, how the people or the organization responsible for that mistake, how they respond afterwards, how they behave afterwards, that to me almost says more than the mistake in the first place. And I think I feel like that with people too.
Yeah.
I've felt like that when people have hurt my feelings, or you know, there's been a disagreement or something. It's not that happened, because we're all human and all of us can say the wrong thing or make a mistake or hurt somebody's feelings without meaning to. It's what happens after that
Next,
shows who
what
you are.
comes next?
Yeah.
How do you repair that relationship? How
Yeah.
do you build that trust back?
And I think it's what happened after we got sick. Almost, to me, sometimes that feels much worse.
Yeah,
Much more difficult to deal with.
it is worse, in my opinion. It's much worse.
Yeah.
If
So
we were being looked after, if things had happened in an ideal world, if we were being looked after and this was being talked about and we were being researched and all the things that we would like to have happened, I don't think that trust would be as badly as damaged as what it is. Do you?
no. And you think, is that, I mean, you can never say never, but I don't feel like I will ever quite trust the things I trusted before. I don't think I
No.
will trust the government controlled healthcare system. I think if I broke my arm, or you know, something like that, then it's brilliant for that kind of thing. But I think for my general health well-being, I'm not sure how much I would trust that again. Because I don't trust them at all now, but I don't think that would come back. So that leaves you in this limbo situation, right? Who do you trust for your health? And I know, you know, I've looked at some very alternative um, ways, but I trust. I call her Witchy Lady, who I go to. I trust her implicitly. She suggests anything, then I'm more than happy to try it, because I trust her to genuinely have my interests at heart. She has spent a significant amount of time talking to me and listening to me, and respects my opinion and my feelings about my own health. I don't get that from our country's healthcare system.
No, and I don't think a lot of people do, you know. Thinking before I got ill, you know, conversations that I would have with people in a sports therapy clinic setting, you know, people would come to me because they didn't feel that the NHS could provide what I could. They didn't trust that they would be able to help them the way I could. Um, and you know, some people say, "Oh, well, people like Witchy Lady and people like what I used to do, they're just taking your money. You know, it's all woo woo. It's all," but actually, if you talk to people who've been treated by someone who is an alternative therapist, they'll say that they found much more value in that than 6 sessions, 15-minute sessions with someone that gives you a sheet of paper normally and tells you you know, this is what we recommend everyone does, instead of looking at you as an individual holistically and your needs individually, because it's not one size fits all, is it?
And I think those of us who are exploring some different I like to call them traditional therapies. I used to call them alternative, but now I prefer thinking of them as traditional. They're the things that we've forgotten. Those of us who are exploring that, I think it's the lack of trust that's led us to that. And we are now developing more comfort and getting comfort and building trust again in a completely different healthcare system that's working for us. And that takes time, as with all of these things, aren't they? That all of these kind of things that we're learning and transition and changes that we're going through, it takes time for us to adapt to them. But I've personally quite enjoyed that process. I've enjoyed learning about all of these different things and things that I didn't know were out there. And there are ways of healing that are beyond our comprehension.
There are.
We learn about them. We literally can't even imagine what they might be. And I found that quite exciting, actually.
Yeah, because a lot of science is just a theory until it becomes proven, right? So even science, until it becomes proven, is woo-woo.
Yeah.
But we do have to be careful, don't we? Because again, going back to trust, there are people who've kind of sought out the vulnerable members in the injured community and really preyed on them.
Yeah, I mean, we've been targeted by scammers. There was an international fraudster, do you remember, about a year ago? And people who, yeah, definitely targeted us individually. And then this was before we all kind of met each other as well. Do you remember when we got to know Brie and other people in other countries? And then we'd all kind of meet and find that we were all targeted by the same person. That was just crazy. And that was happening. And it's still happening now, isn't it? I mean, only today, I think Brian put a safeguarding comment out because we targeted again. And this happens regularly. And if we could trust the organizations that the government wants us to trust, and we actually could trust them, we wouldn't be taken advantage of in that way.
No.
Either. So it feels like we're kind of getting attacked everywhere, and it's an effort to come out of this not feeling paranoid and mistrusting.
Yeah.
I've had I had a situation in my past many years ago where trust was completely broken. It's basically somebody, let's say, kind of leading a double life, and discovering that was a massive change in my view of the world. So it was that kind of level of it was like you just don't look at the world the same way when you learn about things like narcissistic abuse and, you know, these people who lead these double lives. And when you learn about that kind of thing, you just think, I didn't even know people like this existed in the world. So you have to completely change.
Especially someone that you trusted that
Yes.
implicitly.
Yes, huge, absolutely huge, and life changing. And I'm thinking back to how I dealt with that, because I didn't want to go through life not trusting. So you can come out of those situations thinking, well, I can't trust anyone ever again. I can't get in a relationship ever again. You know, who's telling me the truth and who's not? I thought, I don't want to do that. So instead, I decided that I wasn't going to trust, but I wasn't going to not trust. So I was going to occupy this neutral space until somebody proved one way or the other. So I was just going to not judge anything. And I found that was a brilliant way for me to move on through life after that experience, but not being bitter and cynical and angry and mistrusting.
But you do go through a bit of that, right? You do, after someone, you know, especially because in this situation, everyone's gone through a little angry phase, or it comes back every now and then, yeah, because we've had our trust completely smashed to smithereens. So you do go through before you get to that kind of realization that you can have this neutral space and build on trust, you do have those moments of anger, don't you?
You do. I
It's
think,
completely natural.
yeah, completely, totally. But I think
It's
we
not
need,
dwelling on them, isn't it? It's not dwelling on them and moving through them.
no, it's more, I think at some point you make a very conscious decision. This is not what I want to be. This is not how I'm going to move forward. This is not, I want to carry this experience with me in a way that is healthy. And that's hard, and that requires effort. Um, but for me, and some people that might not be the right thing, but for me that's definitely been, I don't like carrying negative emotions and anger and bitterness. I don't like carrying those through life with me. I feel like they make my body very uncomfortable.
And that's an anger. The trouble with anger is, especially in this situation, when you're talking like a big entity like the government or the media or the NHS, and not just an individual, like your relationship, like you were talking about in your past. The trouble is, you then tar everyone in the NHS with that brush. You tar everyone in the government with that brush. You tar it, so you don't give the people that are compassionate and do want to do good things the right enough respect, enough kind of benefit of the doubt. You
You
tar
don't
them
give
all
them
with
the
the same
chance to
brush.
show you their compassion.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
denying yourself um, possible healing opportunities.
It's like it'd be very easy, wouldn't it? And some women do this when they come out of a relationship where they've been really badly kind of treated. They'll say, "That's it. I'm not going to get involved with another man ever again," and they just completely.
I was on a support online support group for narcissistic abuse survivors, and it's a fantastic group. But I would see a lot of the women and men that were on there saying, I'm never ever having a relationship, and they were women on there, they said they hadn't had a relationship in 20 years, and I would look at that and think, I don't want that. I don't want, and I could see they were still carrying this, but I don't want that. We have to make some decision, but it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's not easy because you have to put yourself in a vulnerable place again. You have, at some point, you will be in a vulnerable place where you are learning to trust someone or something or a group of something again. And
I remember
that's a really difficult place.
when Matthew came round to pick me up on a date, on a kind of date we'd already been together, but he said, right, we haven't been on a proper date. So he said, I'm going to come and pick you up and we're going to go on a date. So we walked in, and I actually dressed up, which I don't bother doing, but I did, and I dressed up and looked quite nice and everything, and he walked in and he said, oh, you look beautiful. And I ran upstairs and burst into tears. And I thought, oh my God, this man, he's going to think that I'm absolutely crazy, because I just couldn't cope with that level of, warmth and kindness and such a lovely thing to say, because instantly I'm thinking, well, can I trust this? Can I? But I pushed on through with that. And this is the situation that you have to keep putting yourself in.
And this is what we're finding with people in the group, isn't it? When they find a compassionate doctor that actually cares and will listen to them and talk to them about their injury. They say, I just burst into tears in his office because it's the first time someone's actually listened to me. And
I did it in A&E in Swindon not that long ago, actually, didn't I? Remember the nurse was so lovely. And there's a lot of emotion that we're carrying, and it requires so much to try to put ourselves out there. Trust to actually you won't go to A&E, will you?
well, I have done, but I
Yeah.
don't like it.
But you don't, it takes a lot, doesn't it? It's a lot of effort, it's a lot of trust, it's a lot of management of your emotions to be able to just set foot
Mm,
going
mm,
there. And we made these medical trauma cards for our members to take, if they're going to hospitals, they can give it to somebody. And I looked at those the other day and I just thought, you know what, it's shocking that we feel the need to make those, actually.
mm,
And they say, to the healthcare professional, please will you be kind to this person, it's quite difficult for them to be here. And I did look at them when they arrived and I thought, that's just awful that we have to remind a healthcare professional to be kind, and that we have people who experience medical trauma.
mm.
um,
Yeah, but I think it helps sometimes to remind people, like medical professionals in A&E, that we are feeling vulnerable, because they're so, it's a busy environment, they're used to dealing with large numbers of people, and sometimes they can come across in a way that might feel unkind but isn't. So
mm.
if they're made aware that you've had problems in the past, and you feel traumatized by just being here, um just giving them that card so they know really helps, I think.
I had one thing that I did with trust that I have found this really useful, and this is to do with trust in the media and trust in what people tell you. And this was because we get bombarded, don't we, with videos or stories about some horrific things and what may or may not be going on in our bodies, and what may or may not be behind all sorts of things. And we get sent quite a lot of that stuff, and it can be really overwhelming. And again, it goes back to, do I trust this information? And when
Mm,
you don't trust all the normal sources of information that you're supposed to trust, when you can't trust those, you think, well, I can't, what do I trust? Do I trust that? But that's really scary. So do I want to spend my energy thinking about that? And I decided that I was only going to trust something if I could see it with my own eyes. And that was a really interesting little exercise. And I used it for everything. Like, well, somebody tells me some information, can I see that? Have I seen that myself? No. Well, then I don't know, I can't say hand on heart whether that's true or not. So I'm just not going to put any energy or time thinking about that. And I applied it to everything. Like, you could name anything. I'm like, well, I can't see it, I'm looking out my window and I can't see it, so I don't know for sure if that's real or not. And it was so liberating, and I really liked it. And I got into this place where I only trusted something you said to me, or Matthew said to me, or somebody who, that I could see. And I really liked that. And a friend of mine said, when I told him about this, he said, oh, but what do you worry about then? Like it was a bad thing. And his husband said to him, just think about what you just said then. And I said, I don't worry about anything.